All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We have Tim Oldham from AdAlta kicking off the Investor Summit today. Tim, I will hand it off to you to begin presentation.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce you to AdAlta today. So AdAlta is all about next generation protein and cell therapies that essentially go where traditional antibodies can't. Antibody drugs revolutionized the pharmaceutical landscape when they first appeared around 30 years ago, but they can't do everything, and AdAlta's mission in life is to essentially fill the gaps where antibodies cannot. We are listed in Australia. Don't be put off by share prices here. We don't run the risk of being delisted from the boards here just because of what our share price looks like. It's really about what are we doing and how are we creating value for our shareholders. So we have a proprietary technology that we call iBodies. iBodies are really tiny antibody-like molecules that mimic the antibodies found in the shark immune system, and they are about 1/10 the size of a human antibody. And we use these to essentially go where traditional antibodies cannot. If you can hit a drug target or a disease target with an antibody, you should. If you can't, bring on the iBodies. We think about our business in two parts. Our discovery business is really about leveraging that iBody platform to create what we call lead candidates, or iBody molecules that bind to or engage with targets that are of interest from a therapeutic perspective. We can then continue to develop those as products in our product development business, or we can partner with other companies to do that development process. And we progress those then through value-adding development milestones prior to further out-licensing or co-development. And we're trying to solve disease challenges today in the areas of fibrosis and inflammation on the one hand, and immuno-oncology in the other. So that's all great and all theoretical. We only create value when we turn the technology into products that big pharmaceutical companies want to buy from us or license from us. And we have a portfolio of three asset classes today that I will introduce on this slide. The first, our lead asset, is AD214, which treats fibrotic diseases. This is scarring of internal organs. This is through phase 1. We're preparing it for phase 2 clinical trials now. And licensing deals at this stage of development can attract milestones up to $45 million and more, with $320 to $1 billion in milestone payments down the track. The second area we're working on, which I'm really personally excited about, is the field of CAR T cell therapy or cellular immunotherapy. These have revolutionized blood cancer outcomes, but the translation of those successes into success in solid tumors has remained elusive. And we think our iBody technology is a key to enabling that transition from blood cancers to solid cancers. And I'll talk more about our AD214 asset and our CAR T programs later on in this presentation. The third area we're working is in collaboration with GE Healthcare, one of the world's leading imaging companies, to use our iBodies to actually target an enzyme called granzyme B, which is actually secreted by your immune system when it's fighting cancer. And the idea here is that we're trying to image an activated immune system in response to cancer immunotherapies. And if you can do that, you get a patient onto therapy as quickly as possible, onto a therapy that works as quickly as possible. And more importantly, you identify patients who are not responding much earlier than is possible today. Imaging agents get to market much faster than a therapeutic product. And so while the revenue isn't as high, it can happen a lot faster. And so we have, we're very excited about the collaboration here and the potential for really helping the immuno-oncology space. I'm not going to talk too much about this program today, but I'm happy to answer questions in any of the one-on-one meetings afterwards. And finally, their iBody platform itself is also something we can monetize, through collaborations with pharmaceutical companies, and our collaboration with GE Healthcare is a good example. So not only do we have this really cool technology that can do things that traditional antibodies can't, we're already well on the way to monetizing that and turning it into products that not only transform outcomes for patients with debilitating diseases, but can also create value for pharmaceutical companies and hence for our shareholders. So let's talk about our 8214 program. As I mentioned, we're using this molecule as a first-in-class molecule to treat fibrotic diseases. So fibrosis is scarring of an internal organ. It can affect almost any organ in the body, whether it's the lungs, the kidney, the heart, the eyes. I'm going to talk here as an example about idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is the lead indication. This is scarring of the lungs. This is irreversible, it's unpredictable, and it's incurable. And essentially, if you can imagine your lungs expanding and contracting every second for your life as you scar, or as the lungs develop scarring, that elasticity reduces and your lungs can no longer expand and contract. That inhibits your lung capacity. And on average, patients diagnosed with IPF will pass away within 4 years of diagnosis simply because they can no longer breathe. The only curative therapy today is a lung transplant. There are 2 drug therapies on the market that slow but do not halt progression. They generate $4.3 billion in sales already, but they have limited efficacy and some very serious side effects. So I'd like to introduce Bill Van Nierop. Bill's one of the lucky ones. Bill was diagnosed with IPF in 2015. In 2016, with just 50% of his normal lung capacity, he walked 700 kilometres through central New South Wales in Australia to raise money and awareness for lung fibrosis research, and really to put this disease on the map, because people don't understand it, they don't know about it so much. That was 2016. In 2017, he kayaked 2,000 kilometres down Australia's longest river, the Murray River, again to raise money for IPF and raise awareness for this debilitating disease. During COVID, Bill was lucky enough to need and then receive a double lung transplant. And on Monday, he's doing it all again. This time, 1,400 kilometres down one of Australia's 3rd longest river, the Murrumbidgee River, again to raise money and awareness for lung research and IPF in particular. And we at AdAlta are inspired by Bill. We want to help create more Bills in this world, and we're very proud to be supporting the Long Kayak for Lungs 2. The details are on this page if anyone feels inclined to support what is a pretty amazing cause for a patient population with a massive unmet need. So what is our solution? What are we doing about this debilitating disease? So 8214 is already a molecule with a really strong value proposition. It's a first-in-class molecule, first molecule going after this particular disease pathway against a well-validated target and mode of action. We've demonstrated preclinical efficacy in multiple animal models of fibrotic disease. We've obviously established GMP manufacturing processes, and we've successfully completed a phase 1 clinical trial. We have a really strong regulatory position with orphan drug designation in the US, intellectual property protection out until 2036 and potentially beyond. And significantly, I'll talk about in a minute, we've actually just released some data in the last 6 weeks that shows that the drug could be effective at the clinically convenient dosing regimes we would need to put this into practice. And that was a really important bridge we needed to cross before phase 2. We're extending our phase 1 study at the moment on the back of that new data. We're accelerating our partnering discussions to non-dilutively finance phase 2, and we are on track to complete all our preparations for phase 2 in lung or kidney fibrosis, but most likely lung fibrosis. So what's this new data that's got us so excited? So as I mentioned, we demonstrated that 8214 works in a number of different animal models when we give it intravenously. We also know that it was safe and well tolerated in humans in phase 1 clinical trials, and that we could engage the target receptor for an extended period of time in human clinical trials. What we didn't know was whether the receptor occupancy we saw in humans was sufficient to deliver the efficacy we'd seen in animals. We didn't know what level of receptor occupancy was actually required to generate efficacy, and therefore we didn't know how frequently 8214 would need to be given. But what we did know that was we needed to be able to give 8214 intravenously at least no more frequently than every 2 weeks. So what we've done now is some experiments in the laboratory, some really tough and difficult assays that our team has completed that shows that the level of receptor occupancy that we observe in phase 1 clinical trials at just 50 or 60% receptor occupancy is enough to inhibit maximally a model fibrotic process. That's kind of complicated, but basically what it says is that at 2 weeks after an IV dose, we have sufficient receptor occupancy of the target for 8214 to be efficacious. And that's huge news for us, because for the first time we've been able to say, yes, we're effective in an animal, we're safe in a human, and now we know that for the duration needed between doses to be convenient in the clinic and in clinical practice, we can be effective. And that's massively de-risked our progress into phase 2 clinical trials. So as a result of that, we're now extending our phase 1 program to demonstrate safety in multiple doses at a higher dose than we tested originally. And that's to ensure that we have the safety package necessary for the top dose we're likely to use in phase 2 clinical trials. This means that we will end up not having to do a dose escalation stage in phase 2, so it's a shorter and less expensive phase 2 study. It further explores the pharmacokinetics and dynamics that we've seen in the phase 1 clinical trial. And it better informs the dosing and the dosing schedule that we'll be able to use in phase 2. And it significantly enhances the partnering process. So we've had a number of conversations with potential pharmaceutical or licensing partners around the world, and they have been very positive about this phase 1 extension study, complementing the new data that I've just described. So, all well and good. Is pharma licensing molecules in this space, and are they paying interesting sums of money for them? The answer to both those questions is yes. This slide shows recent licensing deals for IPF, or idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, assets, showing that between preclinical and phase 2, transactions are being completed for upfront payments from 45 million euros in this case and upwards, and total deal values in the up to $1 billion in potential milestones. And you'll note that 2 of those deals have been done in the last 12 months, one at preclinical stage and one at phase 2. 8214 is right in the middle of those 2 transactions, and there are a number of deals that you can see on this slide that have been done in that space recently. So we're certainly confident from the conversations we're having with pharma that they're actively licensing and looking to license more products in this field, and that 8214 is a potentially attractive asset for them. Now let me turn to our cellular immunotherapy program, or what we call our iCAR cell therapies. So chimeric antigen receptor cell therapies essentially involve re-engineering or genetically modifying a patient's own immune cells so they can go and find cancer as though it was any other pathogen. By re-engineering your cells, we're creating a living drug. We can potentially cure cancer with a single dose. This is incredible technology that's only become possible in the last decade. The first drugs were only approved in 2017, and they've already generated, or they're already generating more than $2.5 billion in sales a year. The market's forecast to reach $20 billion by 2028. By 2030, half those revenues will be in solid tumors. And this is significant because today, the only approved CAR T cell therapies, CAR T because it's engineering a T cell in this case, are for blood cancers. 90% of all cancers are solid tumors. They're harder to target, they're harder to access, they're immune suppressive. And in order to really realize the potential of this amazing technology for solid tumors, we need to create what we call multifunctional CAR cell therapies. They're not just targeting an antigen on the tumor that directs the immune system to cancer like a GPS tracker. We need to potentially target multiple different targets at the same time. We need to secrete molecules that overcome immune suppression, that are able to penetrate the tumor. And this is where we think our I-bodies are really significantly advantaged. So we believe that the I-bodies being so small take up much less room in the inserted gene than traditional technologies that are used here. And that enables us to create twice the engineered functionality into these cells than you can with traditional technology. In other words, multifunctional CAR T cells or CAR immune cells suddenly become within reach. Our antibodies enable us to target novel tumor antigens. They are potentially dual or bispecific CARs targeting multiple antigens, which improves safety and/or targeting. And we can actually get antibodies secreted from the T cell that then bind to immune checkpoint inhibitors and actually provide the T cell with its own what we call armor to overcome immune suppression. We have an existing collaboration with Australian company Carina Biotech on up to 5 different targets for our CAR T cells. The first of these is currently in vivo animal testing, and we have 2 other targets already in discovery. And the objective again is bispecific CAR T cells in solid tumors. This is something that we can repeat. The collaboration with Carina is something we can repeat over and over again. And if you'll pardon the pun, this is where I think one of the killer applications of the iBody technology actually is. More importantly, you can generate significant value from these programs much earlier in development than you perhaps can with a traditional therapeutic. This shows the upfront value per target and the deal value per target for CAR cell therapies at a preclinical stage of licensing. So in other words, we're not having to do the phase 1 clinical trial. We haven't done quite so much manufacturing development, and you can still generate significant value from these assets. So we think these are faster and easier to develop to the point of being commercially valuable than a traditional therapeutic, and therefore we're putting significant effort into this program as we move forward. So let's cycle back and say, okay, why should you look at AdAlta as an investment? The starting point, the thing that underpins everything we do today is our iBody technology, a really powerful drug discovery tool. It can target things that traditional antibodies can't because of its unique binding capabilities and its small size. And that enables it to actually be assembled into multiple different modular formats that give us a whole range of therapeutics that we can work on. We're working on fusion proteins today with AD214, radiotherapeutics and diagnostics with GE Healthcare, where we've tagged the iBody with a radioisotope, and CAR T cell therapy with our partners at Carina Biotech. So an incredibly powerful tool that can produce not just the assets we have today, but many more in the future. We currently have 5 active assets in development, the AD214 program, the Granzyme B program with GE, and the 3 programs with Carina. We have over 25 other targets that we've hit over time. We're getting significant interest in several of these that potentially create the opportunity for co-development deals similar to the GE collaboration into the future. And we're actively partnering the AD214 program now. So I mentioned partnering. We have 3 distinct partnering initiatives at the moment. The first is to out-license AD214 to generate a return on the investment we've made in this asset to date. And the chart on the right, you can see the partnering prospects as we came out of Bio Industry Conference in Boston in June. We have 21 companies that are actively evaluating this molecule and have described a willingness to partner at the stage we're at and not wait for phase 2 data. We're not forecasting when that deal will be done, and we are reserving the right to continue development ourselves. But our preferred priority at the moment is a non-dilutive financing for phase 2, ideally through a partnership. The second stream we're working on is out-licensing our iBody discovery platform in the field of CAR T cell therapy in particular, to add additional Carina-like collaborations to our pipeline. And bear in mind that the GE collaboration is a model for this. GE funded the discovery program, so that was a drug in our pipeline for free. And finally, we are looking to accelerate our clinical stage pipeline. We recognize that clinical stage assets are what people value the most. And so we are actively looking to acquire, license, or otherwise access complementary near-to-clinic assets that can be enhanced with our iBody technology in the relatively near term. So that means our milestones coming forward are around our 4 strategic pillars. realize the value of AD 214. We've already started the phase 1 extension study. Headline results from the headline results from this program are due at the end of this year or early next year, with interim results definitely next quarter. And partnering discussions that are ongoing. We're aiming to extend our CAR-T collaborations. We're progressing the GE collaboration, and we're investing in our platform to ensure it remains competitive, and to add complementary technologies to it. So not only do we have a series of operational milestones that are 100% within our control, we also have in red here a number of blue sky partnering opportunities that represent significant upside for us today. So in summary, our iBody platform can create significant value, multiple products over time. Our lead asset is heading towards phase 2 and partnering in a $4 billion plus market. We have 2 other collaborations for 4 programs in multi-billion-dollar markets. We've demonstrated that we can develop products all the way to the clinic, that we can partner those assets, and that we really understand our iBody technology. We have a very modest market capitalization today that does not reflect the blue sky potential that those inorganic growth opportunities and licensing transactions offer. And we believe we've got a pretty steady news flow to demonstrate that progress operationally while we get those transactions done. So with that, I'll stop and address any questions that folks may have from what I've talked about so far today.
Awesome. So yes, everyone listening, you can put Q&A in the Q&A chat at the bottom of the screen. Right now we have one question. Any plans for a US stock listing?
So, really good question that we do get quite a bit. At the moment, we don't. We're $13 million on the Australian Securities Exchange right now. That would make us almost minuscule in the US market. We have a very clear ambition that we need to get another 0 on the back end of our market capitalization before we think about heading towards the US. Having said that, we are in conversations with a number of US-based investors. They ask us this question quite a lot. It is an attractive market for us. We want to be responsible about when we think about going there. But unfortunately, I can't forecast or offer a timeline for when that might happen. But certainly we have aspirations in the relatively near term through that complementary technology strategy that I've talked about to get ourselves to a scale where a US listing would start to make sense.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, any questions, last call, you can put them in the chat. And then Tim, what is the best way to get in contact?
Good question. So let me throw up the screen again. The contact details are on the screen there now. Inquiries at AdAlta.com.au will come straight to my inbox. And otherwise, t.oldham@adalta.com.au.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. All right. Bye.
Thank you.